Hey guys, how you doing? This is Benjamin with Benjamin Exotics. In this video today, it's going to be a very important video and a video that really should be broken down into a few different separate videos, and I might do that. But in this video today, we're going to be talking about basically just ball python scales in general. A bunch of different things that any serious reptile or ball python keeper needs to hear. And just some really useful information and stuff like that. And the main problem we're going to be solving today is, I know some people will freak out and you'll get your ball python and their ball python scales will start to peel a little bit on the bottoms. Can be worse, can be not so bad. It's something that nobody has ever talked about on YouTube. I googled it, spent literally half an hour this morning, couldn't find any videos on it, so I'm going to do a video on that. But the first thing, before we even talk about the scales peeling, anything like that, is we need to ask, first thing, why do snakes shed? The actual reason they shed. Main reason, of course, that everybody's going to tell you, if you ask them why do snakes shed, is going to be to, of course, get bigger. They have to, stretch their skin, their scales have to grow bigger so they can, get bigger, of course. The other thing that people don't talk about, and a main reason once they get to adulthood, is to repair damage. Remember, the scales on the snake are like an armor. They're meant and built to take a beating. Not, I don't mean, go beat your snake, of course, but take that in the right context. You know what I mean. Gosh, I should not have said it that way. But basically, they're meant to be able to be scratched up and then be able to, repair. Okay? Be able to repair damage. So, if you guys have ever kept a snake or rescued a snake that has scale rot, you'll notice that once a snake's scales start to peel really bad, or get infected, or get scale rot, it'll immediately kick them into shed right then and there. The reason is because the body is responding in the snake, and it knows that the snake is having a problem with their scales and that it needs to repair damage. So this is a very important thing to know when we're looking at anything that has to do with scales. So the two main reasons that they do shed their skin is, number one, to grow, to get bigger, make the scales grow bigger, make the skin get bigger. Second reason is to repair damage. So another thing that we need to look at is, we'll talk about scale rot really quickly as well before we get into this peeling scales and stuff like that. So with scale rot, here's the main thing that actually causes scale rot. Okay, some people say it's because you keep them too wet. Some people say it's because you keep them in, too dirty. There's all these different theories on scale rot. Here's the actual reason and the actual everything that this is why scale rot actually occurs in 99.9% of the cases. It's because you're keeping your snake in too dirty of an environment, but not the environment itself is doing that. What happens is over time, I don't care what anybody says, their scales are going to wear a little bit. Whether it's rolling over logs, rocks, anything you have in their enclosure, especially substrate. Even substrate can be a little bit abrasive. They're going to go over that and their scales are going to peel a little bit that we'll talk about in a second. That's fine. And all that means is just they're getting scraped up a little bit and there's just a little bit of, scale sticking up every once in a while. It's nothing huge, and on my snakes I don't really see it, barely ever, but it is very small and you can see it. And what actually happens is the main things that cause it is too wet, too dirty of an environment that goes from dry to wet a lot. When it goes from dry to wet, you're sucking all the good oils out of that snake's scales and making them especially dry and brittle. Then, if the snake goes over any sort of bedding or anything, they're going to peel very easily. And since we're already in a dirty environment, once that snake's scales peel, it's an open wound. That's how it's going to work. And then, since it's a dirty environment, what happens when you have an open wound in a dirty environment? It gets infected. You start to have problems. So, like with this snake right here, if its scale gets cut, that is basically an open wound. Now, of course, it's not like human skin, where if you cut yourself in that sort of sense of an open wound, but if your snake has a cut there and it gets dirty, it's going to act the exact same in the way that the skin is then going to deteriorate and get infected. That's what scale rot really is. Your snake goes over something abrasive, has its environment be too wet and too dry, back and forth, making the scales brittle, and then gets infected because it gets cut open. Now, you can't see it barely at all on this snake because I keep my ball pythons mainly dry. I always make sure the humidity is at a decent level. But if we look at the belly of this snake, Let's see if I can find one example. No, that's a piece of bedding. Normally, I don't barely get it at all on the snake. But like with this snake right here, okay, if you look really closely at some of the belly scales is what the main thing is, and you just look at the sides, you'll see every now and then a little small, I guess, not a chip out of the scale, but you can just tell that these scales have been used. They've been used to go over logs and stuff in his cage. And when we look at that, they're just small little, I don't want to call them peels because that sounds bad, but all it is that, like with skin of course, if I sit here and I scratch my skin for a long time and then I look down, I'll see little pieces of the skin sticking up. It's the same thing with the scales, and that's fine. That's natural. So if you guys see even the smallest bit of that on your snakes, that's natural, that's fine, that's good. What we don't want to see is a bunch of it. That means your enclosure is getting way too wet and then way too dry a lot. I wouldn't keep them wet. If you keep them on wet bedding, you're going to have these problems. Keep their bedding dry unless you're shedding, of course. Over time, you're going to have a little bit of wear, then they're going to shed and be fresh and new. This guy has been going for about 2 months and his scales have barely any wear on them. You cannot, you can see literally, I see one little piece of scale that's like, you know, my skin that's scratched up right here on his stomach on the side. And besides that, his scales look perfect, right? But if you do get it really bad, meaning that you kept the environment way too dry and then way too wet, back and forth, you sucked the oils out of that snake's scales, and then as the snake goes over things, instead of having that oil, I guess, I don't want to call it a lubricant, but instead of having that oil that keeps the scales soft, the belly scales will get brittle because you just sucked all the good oils. Just like in human skin can get dry, same with the snakes, and then they'll start to peel. If that does happen, we want to keep them in the cleanest environment possible. Next time they shed, all that peeling will be fixed, but if we keep them in a dirty environment, you're going to get scale rot. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was a very in-depth scale video talking about a bunch of different things. The main points that I want to get across in this is the peeling of the scales. Very few people have problems with this. I've had it a little bit, and it's natural. It's something barely anybody ever talks about. I saw no videos on YouTube of it, so hopefully this doesn't confuse anybody. But if you look at any snake scales, scales are meant to be an armor, okay? They're meant to be able to protect the snake's sensitive skin. So they are meant to be abrased a little bit, I guess. That's, you know, kind of what I'm trying to get across. They're meant to take some of the abrasion by going over logs and stuff. And then it heals every time that they shed. Heals completely back to normal. If your snakes are having any kind of small peeling, like let's say, especially at the vent sometimes, you'll see the scales will be peeling up a little bit. If you see that, do not worry, don't fret. It's natural, it's normal. The second they shed, they're going to fix all that. If you see it all over the belly, then you have a problem. You need to keep your cage dry and clean. Do not get it wet, thinking, oh, if I get it wet, we're going to put some of the unnatural oils back into the snake. No. If you do that, you get it wet, and then it gets dry again, you're just going to take the oils out of the skin even more, or out of the scales even more, and you're going to make the scales brittle and increase the problem, and, you know, make it worse. So if you guys enjoyed this video, if you did like the video, you know, please give it a like, and if you like the channel, subscribe. Hopefully I got this point across pretty clear. This is a must-watch, I think, for any serious ball python keeper. And I hope you guys did benefit from this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.